Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. This is the big debate, and it's me, and it's Joe Smith, and it's Paul Pogba. Probably the most spoken about player on the planet, certainly the most spoken about Manchester United player. Now, at the time of recording this, we don't know if he is going to sign a new deal. It sort of shifts like the wind. It looks likely that he's not, and he could be heading out in the summer. But the big question is, should he sign a new deal? Should United go all out to try and keep him? Should we stick or twist? Should we allow Paul Pogba to go? I'm going to be arguing that the time may have come just to part ways, to say this isn't going to work, or, you know, there's not going to be a happy ending here. We need to just accept that, move on. While you think there is still a case to be made.
I think it can still work.
It can still work. So I'll start with you, Joe.
Yeah.
You're saying that this can still work.
Yeah.
That we can still keep Paul Pogba and get the best out of him.
Yeah.
Why?
Because, I mean, for a long time at Manchester United, he was comfortably our most talented player. For sort of 3 of the last sort of 5 years, he's been United's best player on his day. And now maybe you can make a case that Bruno outperforms him. Ronaldo probably, obviously, has had a better career and is still probably better than him. But I still think he's such a good player. It would be a ludicrous decision to put the decision to replace him back in the hands of Woodward, Judge, the owners, whoever it may be, and have to go out and try and get someone better than him. And there are players better than him. There are certainly players that have been more consistent and had better seasons than him in recent years. But to go out and have to try and do that again worries me, and I don't believe that they would get the right man in. So I think we know what we've got with Paul Pogba. I think there's still levels he can go to. There's still systems that we can use that would suit him better, and I think we should stick with him.
Now, it's hard to argue with a lot of that. I agree with you. I don't trust Woodward and the Glazers to adequately replace anyone, let alone a player as talented as Paul Pogba. He is incredibly talented. The issue I've got is, are we ever going to get the best out of Paul Pogba? Is he ever going to fit into the Manchester United team and give us the performances consistently that we want? Now, a big problem with Paul Pogba, and this, you can argue this isn't his fault, but he's injured a lot. Now, people say, he's not injured that much. He's missed a quarter of his available games since he came back to United through injury. Now, that's a big chunk of it. And when you've got a player, as everyone agrees, he's extremely talented like Paul Pogba, and you want to try and fit, not just fit him into a system, but maybe even build your midfield around him, it's difficult if he's missing a quarter of games. And it's not just the games he misses. It's not just the amount of games he misses, It's the nature of those misses. It's the nature of the sort of when he misses chunks of the season. You go back to sort of the last time under Jose, where we finished second, and you think of that second season under Jose, we were starting off really well. It was like 4-0 and 4-1 FC, as Steve likes to call it. And then Pogba gets injured, and he misses, I think, 6 or 7 games. And we start dropping points. Yeah. And we never really recovered from that. We never got back to a level where we were going toe-to-toe with Manchester City. You go forward, it's sort of, you know, a couple of seasons from then, and you go even back to last season. Last season, it's the same again. You know, you look like we might have a title challenge. You look at the 3-3 draw with Everton, where you think, right, that's almost, it's not quite the end of the title challenge. We've still got a chance, perhaps, if we go on a run now, but we have to go on a mad run. We have to go on winning him. But then Pogba's out again for another, was it 2 months, whatever it was. And during that time, we beat Manchester City during that time, but it's too little too late, because we also, I think we drew, I think it was at West Brom or wherever we drew. We had a draw.
Sheffield United?
Yeah. No, I think I think that was prior, but we dropped points during that run where we needed Pogba, and perhaps he would have got us over the line. So you're missing games where you need him, and it's affected us. It's affected us in terms of winning trophies. And I want to talk to you about that, about winning trophies, because there's this big argument that the reason we've not won more trophies isn't because of Paul Pogba. It's because you've not had the players alongside Paul Pogba. Is that something that you'd agree with? Do you think he does need better players around him, or do you think he needs to take some responsibility?
I mean, he needs to take some responsibility. He's still our record signing, and he's a huge player and a huge name, and someone that we've had to defend a lot as United fans. Like, I'm not sat here going, it's been brilliant what you're on about. I know that when he comes out and says maybe it's time for a new challenge, or his agent says the Manchester United experiment is over, or whatever it was that he said, I get as pissed off by that as anyone. And I think you can't be doing that. You can't have your agent saying that. People talk about the, not agent, but the agency of Mino Raiola is not up to Paul Pogba. Well, it is up to Paul Pogba. If you're paying someone, he pays Mino Raiola to do the right thing by him. And if he's going to come out and say stuff, you have to stop him saying that. So I'm not going to defend any of that stuff, and the injury stuff as well. But when you ask about do you need better players around him? When he had better players around him in Juventus, he did win trophies. Was it 3 or 4?
I think it was
Italian
4 Serie A's,
won.
a couple of cups as well, I think there was.
Exactly, and he was in a great team there, and obviously that was a team that was dominating at the time. But I never buy this argument of, well, you could have put anyone in that midfield and they would have won it, because they didn't, and they did have him, and he did work, and he did win stuff. And I think, you know, we saw the best of Paul Pogba when he was in Italy, and that's not to say he's not had loads of good performances for United now. The injury thing is a big concern, and that's something that, again, you can't really defend that. It's just whether you think it's worth what he does in those games, or what he can do in those games when he's not injured, because having someone that is injured a quarter of the games is pretty massive. But at the same time, 3/4 of the games he is here. And what we need to do is focus on getting the best out of him when he is playing, rather than, obviously the concern of him not playing is there. But there are plenty of players who have injuries who don't play every week, and still, Kevin De Bruyne has missed loads of games for City. I'm not sure it's quite comparable in terms of the percentage of games he's missed. But I remember the season they got like 100 points. He missed like half of it.
Yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne gets injured regularly, but there's never a question until recently of, should he leave, because his performances have been so good. And obviously we can't say that about Paul Pogba. But I just think when you look at the ideal midfield, or the best midfield in the world, I think he has a place almost in that conversation because of how talented he is, because of what he can do that other people can't do. And even in this squad, he does things that no one else can do. Yes, Bruno Fernandes can pick out a wonderful pass, but I think if you put it on consistency of wonderful passing, I think he's the best passer in the squad. Maybe he hasn't quite got that final incisiveness the same way Bruno has. He doesn't take those risks time and time again. But when you talk about 50, 60, 70-yard passes, you'd put the ball at Paul Pogba's feet ahead of anyone in the United squad. And that has a place, especially if we maybe slightly change our play style, or we get the right person alongside him. Again, you do get a little bit sick after 5 years of saying, we've just got to get the right people alongside him, because we didn't have to get the right people alongside Bruno. He got nearly 50 goals and assists last season without the right people alongside him. But I think, again, it goes back to that thing of who are we going to replace him with? And you talk about having a defensive midfielder. This is the huge thing that happens all the time. We need a defensive midfielder. We need that. But if Paul Pogba goes, you're playing a defensive midfielder alongside Fred or McTominay. That's how it's going. Donny clearly isn't fancied at the moment. Matic is getting past it. Bruno's playing at number 10. So if Paul Pogba leaves and you get, let's say, Ndidi, the ideal candidate, it's Ndidi and McTominay in midfield. You need Paul Pogba to stay for that centre defensive mid to work. You need someone alongside him who isn't Fred or McTominay. Because what's the point in replacing McTominay with Ndidi? Yes, it's slightly better, but Fred's still there, or McTominay's still there. If that CDM comes in, that is to facilitate Paul Pogba. Because otherwise, you're still just playing one of the two players that probably aren't good enough for United.
I understand that. I understand your point, what you're making, and to a certain degree, I sort of agree with some of those points. But we've had a midfield that sort of seemed to work with Paul Pogba. We had Herrera, we had Matic, we had Pogba. You look at and in some of those big games, yes, we had that wonderful run where Ollie came in as caretaker. Yeah. Paul Pogba ends at the season with 13, I think, Premier League goals. Very good return. But you look at he takes, I think, 11 penalties. He scores 8 of them. I think he might have got one of the rebound as well against Everton, which is okay, but I think that's about average for a top level player in terms of scoring, converting your penalties.
I'm not going to slightly above average, but not much.
I'm not going to criticise a player for scoring penalties, but we have to scratch beneath the surface of these stats. And then at the end of that season, he physically says, "I want to leave." It's the only time he's actually gone on camera and said, "I want to leave. I want a new challenge." He says that, and he says, "I've just had my best season." So it's almost like, I've had this great season, I want to move on. And also in the fact that when he has had those players around him and he's done well in big games, like for example, the 2018 FA Cup final. I think it was him, Matic and Herrera was it in midfield. That seems like a strong midfield. He doesn't really step up in that game.
No.
Now in the 2017 Europa League final, he does. I thought he had a very good game against Ajax. He scored an early goal, plays well. We dominate that game. We control that game perfectly. It's a great performance. I was there in Stockholm, loved it, especially at a time when we needed it. But then you look at the FA Cup final against Chelsea, it doesn't really do anything. I look at the Europa League final. Now, I'm seeing Edinson Cavani running past Paul Pogba to go and track back. Now, you can argue, everyone played badly in the 2018 FA Cup final. Everyone played badly in the Europa League final. But not everyone has the talent of Paul Pogba.
Yeah.
I expect players like Paul Pogba to step up. Yeah. Cavani stepped up, but he had a good game. And Paul Pogba, as you've said, is one of the most talented players in the world.
Yeah.
So he should be able to step up against Chelsea or Sevilla or anyone. Sorry, or Villarreal, sorry, not Sevilla. He should be able to do that. And yet, in those big games, which you want big players to perform in, that's why you spend big money on them. Not just so they can, unlock the Leeds or the Newcastle defence. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you want them to step up in the games where a trophy's on the line. Yes, he's done it in 4 years ago, but there's been others where he hasn't. And I think that's a big problem for me. And he can't just say, well, he needs a better midfield alongside him. He steps up in the 2018 World Cup final. N'Golo Kante got subbed. So it's not just about, he had Kante alongside him. Pogba was bossing that midfield, scored a goal, absolutely dominated. The sort of best defensive midfielder on the planet is taken off. Pogba's still there, doing his business, absolutely outstanding. When do we see that in big games from Paul Pogba in finals? Few and far between for me.
True, that is true. But also, United being in finals has been few and far between.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
it's not, I know he's not, like you said, he was excellent in the Europa League final, not so good in the FA Cup final, not so good in the second Europa League final. So I'm not saying he's turned up in all the big games. The thing for me with it is, I worry and I wonder whether it's going to take another system for him to fit in. Like, I obviously have my concerns. Like I said, I'm not sitting here saying he's been brilliant, what you're on about. I worry that the way we play now, under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he maybe doesn't have... And I think it might just come down to, you have to be meaner. You have to be harsher on him. Because the way he plays at the moment is Cavani running past him in the Europa League final. That sums it up. That should never happen. And it's not like he can't run. It's not like he doesn't know where he's meant to be stood. Well, maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't know where he's meant to be stood. Maybe it's coaching. Maybe he doesn't feel like he has to run back because the repercussions aren't there. It's only a Europa League final. Who cares? That's the thing that you need to get rid of with Paul Pogba, I think. This thing of like, Cavani running past him in the cup final. We need a Paul Pogba that is more disciplined, that is faster on the ball, 1 and 2 touch football. If he's going to play that slightly deeper role, that's what you need to see. And maybe it would take a change of coach. And I'm not trying to sack the manager for Paul Pogba here. I'm looking at the bigger picture thinking, let's be honest, it doesn't seem as though Ole's got particularly long left at Manchester United. No matter what you think, whether you want him to stay or not, the results and the rumours are that he's not going to be here forever or much longer. So then you are looking at who's next and can that person get the best out of Paul Pogba? I think if it's the right person, they can. And maybe we're never going to see the player that dominates every single game and grabs games by the scruff of the neck every single time in big finals. He might just not be that player, but that doesn't mean he's bad enough to get rid of or to want to kick out of the club. I understand he's going to be on a lot of money, so you're kind of expecting some of the best performances in the squad from one of the biggest players in the squad. I get that. But I think there's a difference between being good enough to play for Man United and being good enough to excel in a lot of games for Manchester United and being the one you always rely on in cup finals. He's never going to be that. I think we can say with some certainty, Paul Pogba probably won't live up to the potential he had when he was 20 or that we thought he might have. We've seen him for 4 years or 5 years. We know that as fans. He's not going to be that player, but that doesn't mean you get rid of him. Just because you're not quite as good as we hoped doesn't mean that you're worth getting rid of, in my opinion.
No, and I understand that, and like I said earlier, there's a lot of points you make. I don't want to say I don't like Paul Pogba, I don't rate him. I do. For me, it's all the things added together. Yeah. So the cup final situation, not just cup finals. I mean some of the bigger games. Some of the games, against the likes of Liverpool and City. I know he turned up at the Etihad against City, but he's missed some of our biggest games as well. You look at the Marcus Rashford brace against Liverpool. That was one of the best games we've had recently against the Scousers. I know it was a little while ago. He didn't play in that. He didn't play in Paris. He was suspended. Got him to self-suspended in the first leg. Again, we don't blame him, but he did it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You look against the game against City at the Etihad last season. He was injured for that one. Yep. These are big games where you want big players. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a case of him not turning up. It's sometimes he's not been available. And just on the manager front, I remember in 2011 watching that wonderful youth team, watching the likes of Jesse Lingard, the likes of Ryan Tunnicliffe, who's my favourite, Will Keane, and Paul Pogba, and Ravel Morrison, of course. Paul Pogba, we loved him, we raved about him before. This is a kid who's got the world at his feet. Fergie and Riola didn't get on, so he goes to Juve. So that Fergie couldn't keep him here for whatever reason. You might not blame Pogba, you might blame Riola. That's a different debate altogether. But he comes back for a season or two. Him and Josie are all right. Then they fall out massively fall out. And it wasn't just towards the very end. I remember Jose Mourinho sitting in a press conference saying he didn't know where Paul Pogba was. And this was a good 18 months before they fell out, or a year before they fell out. He said, he's gone. I think he's in America. I'm not sure. And it was like, you can see Jose was annoyed. Yeah. This wasn't like, I don't know where he is. This was like, I don't know where he is. So they fall out. Ole comes in, gets the best out of Paul Pogba, plays him further forward. Everything's rosy. Now that's going south. Yep. So we're going, okay, is it Ten Hag, is it Ralph Ragnick or Brendan Rodgers, whoever comes in? Can they get the best out of Paul Pogba? This will be our fourth United manager, potentially, that comes in, who we're saying at the age of 28 years old is going to get the best out of a World Cup winner, a guy who's played in Champions League finals, a guy that's won 4 Serie A titles, a guy that's won, League Cups and a Europa League at United. Now we're going to finally get there. I've been having this conversation for a decade about which manager. And I think you have to, at some point, go, it ain't happening.
No.
It ain't whether it is a Rodgers or a Ten Hag or an Ole or a Fergie or a Jose. I know Fergie.
But there was a period there under Conte and in Italy where it was happening.
It was, but again,
it was happening.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's not as though his whole career has been underwhelming.
It wasn't. It's happened for France.
Yeah.
But for Manchester United, we've been having this same discussion. And I just, you spoke then about, does he need telling? Does he need a bit more? Does people need to get tough with him? And I'm of this opinion. Me and you've spoken about David De Gea and how he's never going to be that goalkeeper that comes off his line and smashes into players. He's not. You're not going to teach him that at the age of 29, 30 years old.
No.
He is the player he is. So you either work with that or you get someone else in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with Pogba. I think he's the player.
I agree.
He's not going to become the player who all of a sudden at 28 years old goes, I'm going to be really disciplined now. When I've got the ball in the edge of my box, I'm going to take 2 touches, then release it. That ain't him. So it's whether you work with that.
Yeah.
In terms of, when I say work with it, you accept it. So you put players behind him, you're moving further up the pitch. So when he does lose it, or if he does lose it, I should say, he's not putting you in danger, or you move him on. I just feel like we're having this debate, and me and you are having it now. We've had it on social media since time immemorial. We've had it just chatting as friends in group chats.
Everyone's had it in the pub, at work, at home, whatever.
It's a debate that's gone on. It's gone on and on for a reason.
Yeah.
And the reason is that we've never really seen the best from Paul Pogba on a consistent basis. We've seen maybe 15 games under Ole as caretaker and all the rest of it. We've seen, a season under Jose where he was quite good, but we've never seen a full sort of spell. And when I say a season under Jose, I think there was fits and starts in that season as well when we won those couple of trophies. But we've never really seen it consistently. And I think that's why we end up at this place.
Yeah.
We're still having the same conversation for a reason.
And the fact that we are having to have this debate is because a lot of what you're saying is true.
Yeah.
And I agree with a lot of it.
Yeah.
And we speak about him all the time. I speak about him on videos. There's a lot of problems that I have with Paul Pogba. I just draw the line, when you're looking at what the solution is, I don't think it is get rid of him is a waste of time. Get rid of him. And I think there is a possibility. You're not going to turn him into, I don't know, Makalele overnight.
Yeah,
he's
not
going to just be
player,
this industrious, hard-working, sit in front of the defensive midfielder just because you get a new manager in. But players do play differently in different systems under different managers with different players alongside them. That's what I'm hoping for. And again, he's 28 years old. He's not at a point where you can rule him out of improving or having a bit of wisdom, using this experience a little bit more to play the role that he needs to play. I don't think that it's time to get rid of him. I think it's time to give him another chance and say, this is your last chance. You were saying before we went live, this is his last contract. This is the big one. You're 28 years old. You're in your prime. This is taking you to 32, 33, 34 years old with optional extras and all that. This is the big one. If you're ever going to prove it, if you're ever going to stick somewhere, you're going to stay at Manchester United. You've got 5 years. If you don't start winning trophies now, you have a career that went nothing, 4 Italian titles, nothing, World Cup, nothing.
Yeah.
Or you can look back and go, 4 Italian titles, 2 Premier Leagues, a World Cup, a champion. Like, if you want to get that on your CV, he has to start doing it now. And I'm not in any sort of disillusion that he needs to turn things around and things need to be a little bit different. But I just think he can, and I think he can do that at Manchester United.
Joe says he can do that at Manchester United. I'm not so sure. I think we might have to just hold our hands up and say it's time for just move on from Paul Pogba. What do you think? Do you agree with Joe? Do you agree with me? Let us know in the comments. Give yourselves a bit of a shout out as well. Let us know whether you think that there's still life left in Paul Pogba's Manchester United career, or have you just had enough of the Paul Pogba circus, as it's often termed? Joe, where can people find you?
Joe Smith 93 on Twitter and Instagram.
You know where to find me, Jay Martin. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel as well. Let's hit 700,000 subscribers by the end of the season. By the end of the season, we might actually know whether Paul Pogba's going to have a future Manchester United career. Yeah, we better do, because he'll be able to walk away if he doesn't. This has been Stretford Paddock, the big Paul Pogba debate. Thanks for watching.
Make sure to go and check out all of our latest merch at paddockmerch.com. We've got loads of new designs and even more products coming all the time. With 2 or more items, you get 20% off using the code Paddock20. And if you remember, there's even bigger discounts available. Link is in the description.